Hi everyone, welcome to another video. I am Laurent Dakar. Yes, we've changed locations again. I've decided I'm just gonna bring you around while I look for a good place now in the winter time. Today I'm going to talk about the books that I've read in the past 2 weeks, so the first part of October. I have actually managed to read quite a lot, and I think the reason for that is that I still have a concussion, and that means that I can't do a lot, and most of my time is spent just, especially the first week, was just staring at the ceiling with either an audiobook or sometimes with an actual book. So we've got quite a lot. We've got a few books to talk about. First, this book, a little book, Novi by Gaelle Josse. It's a French book. It hasn't been translated. Novi désarcordées. Probably said that wrong the first time. Would translate to Our Unaccorded Lives or Unattuned Lives. It's about a classical pianist, and he gets a message from a fan of his, and the fan says, "Oh, thank you for all of your music, and I have learned about you via a patient of mine at a psychiatric hospital. She's been here for 3 years, and the only thing that she does is listen to your Schumann CD all the time, and she doesn't talk." And that woman, it turns out, is the love of that man's life, the pianist's life. So the pianist, what he does is he abandons everything and he decides to go to that psychiatric ward. It's not a hospital, because he wants to come into contact with her and see how she is. And so he does that, and he tries to be allowed to talk to her, to just be with her, and he kind of abandons his whole life, and throughout that you discover also what their love life was like and what happened, because as you can imagine, and we learned that I think in the beginning already, although what's the beginning when your book is 120 pages, we learned that them splitting up or him going away has a lot to do with her being in a psychiatric ward. I think the thing I liked about this book was mainly the writing. It's rather light, and there are a lot of kind of musical references, especially because the main character is a pianist. And the woman, she's one of those very light and childlike characters, those like fairy tale kind of, I don't really know how to describe her. One of those, people that are still kind of children. They're very delicate, and they're kind of happy but also kind of sad all the time, and they can't really look out for themselves, have got a group of friends that kind of look after them, and I like those kind of characters, but we don't learn a lot about her. At least I would have liked it to be more. And I don't know, there were some weird things where 10 pages from the end, suddenly, without really a reason, you get his backstory and how he was raised, and that kind of explained things that I wasn't aware were needed to be explained. So yeah, I've got mixed feelings about this one. And another book that I've got mixed feelings about, also French, is Daiwo, de Wegwerpfabriek. Gonna look up what the title is of this in French first. So I think the French title is just Daewoo. So I imagine the English title would be the same. A wegwerpfabriek is a wegwerp. Usually that's a term you use for like tissues, the ones that you throw away directly. So Daewoo is also one of those factories that use and throw away. Anyway, it's about working situation in the north of France, and I'm going to talk about this book more in a review that is about to come. But it's non-fiction, and I read it in Dutch, although it's about a French thing, and I don't like that. But yeah, weird book. So you've got that review to look out for. Let's talk about another French book that was completely different, and again, that I kind of didn't read in French. Well, I didn't read it. I audioed it. It's not this one, it's actually this one. So this is Les Disparus de la Clairdelune. In English, it's called The Disappearance of Clairdelune. It's the second book in the Miror-visitor edition, and it's by Christelle Dabos. So I listened to this on audio in English, and ordered also the French version of the second book and the third book, and I have also the first in English. And I mean, I love these covers, but look, they don't match. This doesn't match. So anyway, but beautiful covers. It's set in a world. Wait, I read this one. Still need to read this one. It's set in a world where the Earth has kind of been shattered in. Anyway, it's set in a world where the Earth has been shattered into different pieces, different arcs, and on each arc there is a family or more families, and they all have special powers. And our main character, Ophelia, comes from a family where people have special relationships with objects, so oftentimes objects kind of come to life around them, or at least starts having feelings, so doors will start closing shut because they're angry if there's one of those person around that is angry. And she, when she touches objects, she can feel and see what people in the past have felt or seen when they were touching that object. And she's sent off to another arc to marry Mr. Thorne, and she doesn't really know why that is. And that's also the plot also of the first one. But in the first one, she's still like a secret on the arc where she's sent to. And in the second one, people are aware that she is going to marry this Mr. Thorne. And there are a lot of intrigues going on. There are people disappearing, and it all kind of has to do with, well, something or another, and you learn about that in the book. I'm sorry, I'm not really talking about this very clearly, which is always hard with the second book, but yeah. What I like most about this book is the world. The world is very interesting with all of these different people with different powers. And I love the relationship between Ophelia and Mr. Thorne. They hate each other, but it's kind of one of those relationships with a lot of tension, and I just love it when you have this tension building and you as the reader know that they're gonna fall in love. Just absolutely love that. So this was very much escapism, and I'm looking forward to getting to the third book. And there's also a fourth book. Look how pretty it is. Anyway, so that's those. Then I also, on audio, listened to The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, and also World Without Us. These are the first and the second volume of the Kingsbridge trilogy. They're historical fiction. The first one is set in the year 1000 approximately, I would say. So in this Kingsbridge, this fictional village and then town, and we follow a lot of different characters. We've got a monk that then becomes head of the priory. There's a priory in Kingsbridge. There's a master mason who is trying to find work and whose ideal job would be to build a cathedral. There's an evil nobleman that just likes to war and rape women, and there's a woman who has her titles stripped away and kind of needs to make a life for herself. And so we follow all of them, and they have relationships with one another, and it's about how this village becomes a town and the role of the priory. And there's also a lot of architecture in here because of the master mason, and how he starts building things, which is very interesting. It's you get a lot of information, but not in a way that is dry. It's still kind of, it always fits. There's always a problem that needs to be solved, and then he solves it, and that's how you learn about some kind of architectural solution. So it spans a couple of decades, and it paints a really good picture of life at that time and the political intrigues. So you've got the political intrigues within the priory, but also then how that links to the town, and also how that then links to the bishops, and then also how that is all linked to the national intrigues. So you've got in this book, so I'm not very at home in English kings and queens, but it starts with the sinking of some kind of ship, and some kind of prince was on it, and then there's war in England. But that links then to the bishops, and then again back to the priory. So you've got this very interesting dynamic going on, I thought that was very cool. So I loved rereading this. And directly afterwards, I listened to the second book. It's somewhat longer. This one is, I don't know, 1,200 pages. But it was only 14 hours to listen to. So with my just lying around and only audiobooking, it was just 2 days. Anyway, it's pretty much the same structure as the first one. We've got actually pretty much the same characters. Again, the monk that becomes a head at the priory, and a builder type of person, and a woman that is trying to build up her life, and a bad earl person. But it's again at the Kingsbridge, and it's kind of, Kingsbridge has grown. This is 200 years later, and you don't need to read this to read the first volume to understand this. But the priory has grown, the cathedral is more important. What I really liked is that women play a bigger role in this, because there's not only the priory but also a nunnery, and you see also the political shifts that leads to. There's a hospital. It's not only about a master mason and a cathedral, but there's also other buildings going on. The national political intrigues also have a new dimension. So that was very, very nice. I especially liked also that one of the characters starts working in a hospital, and the Black Plague starts becoming a thing. So you've got, that was kind of interesting as well. Both of these books are really good. They're like fictional, but still very informative at the same time. I would say the one negative is that the characters, they're kind of a little bit too perfect. They're not very, very flawed. They don't feel very realistic. Somehow all of the intriges do get fixed, and everything always turns out right, and it's just too easy. So the intelligent master mason and the architects and blah blah blah, they always find a special, new, innovative way to solve a problem that no one had done before, and they do that 10 times in the space of 1 year. And that just is a little bit too much for me. I would have liked somehow that there were also problems that couldn't be fixed. But yeah, very good books. There is rape in both. But I'm very much looking forward to reading the third one, A Column of Fire. I don't know when this one is set, if it's much later. Oh yeah, this one is in 1558, so again, probably not needed to read the other ones to understand this one. But now, I really like that I now have the other ones very freshly on my mind, and I'm curious to see if in this one again, the Kingsbridge world and the characters will be just developed a little bit further. I think that's going to be very interesting. So, looking forward to that. Now, I also listened to another audiobook, and that was Run Me to the Moon by Paul Yoon. That is also historical fiction, although somewhat closer. It's in 1960, I believe it starts, maybe 1970s, and it's in Laos at a time when there is the war in Vietnam, and that kind of leaks also into Laos, and the country is bombed very often. And there are Vietnamese soldiers that try to go through Laos to the south. Anyway, it's about 3 orphans, a brother, a sister, and a friend of theirs, and they're 17, I believe. At the start of the novel, all 3 of them work for a kind of field hospital, and they try to pick up people and find medicine throughout the country, and especially they do that on motorbikes, and they especially try to pick up people that are victims of the bombs or of mines or bombs that haven't exploded. And a doctor that works at that hospital tries to find a way for them to escape Laos, and each part of the book is narrated by a different person. So you've got the 3 orphans, but also 2 other side characters. The first part of the book is easily the best part. It's very interesting, it's very well written, it's kind of dreamlike. The more the book progresses, the less I cared for what was going on and cared for the characters. There were parts that I didn't really understand what the point of it was. It's an interesting book in that the narrative isn't always leading. So oftentimes in fiction, somehow choices are made to make the book compelling. And in this book, sometimes narrative would go in a direction that is very real and does correspond to what would happen in real life. But pacing-wise, isn't very compelling in a fiction book. Yeah, I can't explain it better than that without giving away things that happen, I'm afraid. It is an interesting book. It gave me, it made me have a better idea of Laos, because there's also the very intriguing description of a field of jars, where there are these huge pottery jars, and the fact that all of these bombs were just dropped all over and a lot still haven't exploded, and that still is a problem today, and how it was for someone that escaped Laos at that time to then, for example, be brought to France. Yeah, I'm a bit conflicted about this book as well, but it had definite... If you're interested in life during wartime in East Asia, then you might want to pick this one up. But I read another book that did that a lot better, and that is Train to Pakistan by Kushwant Singh. I read this as part of a read-along with Jyotsna from Jyotsna's books, which I will link below. We're going to discuss the second part of the book this Sunday, so I don't know what the others think of it. So this is set in India in 1947, and it talks about a thing that happened in history that I had no idea of, which I am ashamed of because it's a big thing. So in 1947, when the British were kicked out, India is split into two. What they decide to do is that all Muslims have to go to Pakistan and all Hindus and Sikhs have to go to India. And I don't remember how it started, but these communities that used to live together very peacefully start murdering one another. So people that go from Pakistan to India are murdered on the way over. Whole trains of people are murdered, and then empty trains, well, dead trains arrive at random stations on both sides of the border. And this book is about that. The book is set in a fictional town called Manomajo, and that town is on the border between India and Pakistan. And in that town, the three communities, the Muslims, the Sikhs, and the Hindus, live together very peacefully, and we've got a wonderful depiction at the beginning of what their lifestyle is like and how they live. It's very well written. But then at one point a train arrives and everybody that is inside has been murdered. And that's when you see how that village reacts to that, because the village itself is in India, and then they start having this question of, okay, what should we do? Should our Muslims go away? And there are other people that come to the village and have seen these murders also and try to influence the situation. And we also have a young man who is the village truant, who is in love with a Muslim girl, and that love also plays an important role in how the village deals with the split up between communities. The ending in this book is phenomenal, and I have been waiting and waiting to discuss it with somebody, because it just really rips your heart out. It's very, very interesting. I think it's very relevant also today, and the discussions that we have around how to treat other communities and how that split is still growing. It's a very, very good book. I highly recommend it. It's not even that big. It's only 200 pages. If you're interested in what happens in another country, because apparently this separation, it has a name. I forgot the name of the separation between Pakistan and India. Apparently the separation is for India and Pakistan what the Holocaust is for Europe. And I am dumbfounded that I was never taught this in school. I never came across it before. So really happy for that read-along also to have taught me that. It's a very good book. Have I said that already? Very good book. I have one last book, I think, to talk about, if I haven't forgotten an audiobook. And that is The History of Bees by Maya Lunde. In this book we have 3 timelines. We have one in England in 1859, one in the US in 2007, and one in China in 2000 something something. And in all three of these storylines, we have the importance of bees at that time. So in the first one, we have a biologist who is depressed, but he starts to discover how we can use bees more, how we can tame them. In the second one, so that's 2007 in US, we've got a bee farmer. Is that what they're called? An imker. I knew that. And that's the time when bees start disappearing because of all the pesticides and other stuff. And it's about his reaction to that and the impacts on his farm and etc. and why the bees are disappearing. And the last one is when there are no bees. And that was for me the most interesting one. We've got this dystopian kind of world where food production is completely different than we have now, and it takes a lot more effort. And there are gigantic parts of the society that just, they're kind of like the new bees, and they spend their time spreading pollen on trees, so they have to climb in trees to make sure that the flowers that there are start producing food. And the world population has shrunk immensely. So yeah, that was very interesting. And in all three of the stories, we've also got the relationship between the parent, the main character, and their children or child, which also somehow plays a role and kind of links the three together. They're also linked at the end. I wanted to read this because I'm interested in bees and nature and stuff, and I liked that this had all three parallel timelines at the same time, because then you see the importance of bees through the ages somehow. It's kind of a slow book, and I wasn't as invested as just based on the topic I thought I was gonna be, but it's still a good book. I would still recommend it if you're interested in these kind of things, especially for the reason that I said, that it kind of has the three paths next to one another. I think those are all of the books that I've read in the past 2 weeks. So wait, let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I believe. That's quite a lot. And we've still got the second part of the months to come. I am reading also, by the way, where is it? I can't find it. Well, it's somewhere, and then I need to stand up. The Wizard of the Crow by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. That's a huge book, and I've been loving it. And I'm also reading Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, so you'll hear about those next time. Have you read any of these books? I've got a pretty weird batch again. I mean, we've got historical fiction wartime, we've got Middle Ages, we've got random fantasy with people that can influence other people's minds. We've got a lot again. Anyway, love to hear from you. As always, I'll see you guys in another video. Bye!